Camera two. Make sure that they're getting a good quality stream.
You mentioned quality. I should turn off Wi-Fi, so this has to use my direct wired connection.
Yeah,
I will do
sounds like
that.
a plan.
Oh, it's off already. Oh, we should be good to go. Yeah, you're coming through very clear on my end.
Gotcha. Everything is being received, man. We are good. Connecting all the
Nice.
way over from Ellenwood, Georgia to Japan. What part of Japan?
Yokosuka, Japan. Yeah, Yokosuka.
Yokosuka. My first Japanese word ever said. Did I get it right?
Yeah, if you try dictation with most iOS devices, it will come out your Costco. So I'm living in your Costco. That's where I am. I'm in the cheese section.
Got you, got you. Cool. Well, if you don't know who he is
Yokosuka, you got it.
or who I am, I'll start with me. I'm the irrelevant one here, but my name is Vashaun Jones. I am the visionary of Fedora Outlier LLC, and we exist to equip, encourage, and empower the blind and disabled to do more, be excellent, and live with greater success. And we do that through our teaching on accessible devices and software and employment and all that great stuff. But my guest comes from the great state of North Carolina, somewhere near the mountains. We're going to hear more about that. And now resides in Japan. And it's been a great journey, life journey, that actually got him to be and live in Japan. And my guest comes to me by a great friend, Mr. Eric Smith. And we're going to tell a couple of funny stories about Mr. Eric Smith. But you guys put your virtual hands together for Cai, that's C-A-I, and Beam, B-E-A-M, not N. So Cai, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Domo arigatou gozaimasu. It's
Ah,
great to be here. We use the word here metaphorically, I guess. It doesn't mean what it used to.
got you, got you. So let's jump right in, man. We got about an hour, pretty much exactly an hour, because I'm going to hang up on you and get ready for my next venture of the day. But tell
All
us
right.
about growing up visually impaired, growing up in North Carolina in the mountains, and let the people get a sense of who you are and where you originated.
Okay, sure. Well, um, before I jump into this, I just want to double check the triple sec, as I say. Is my mic quality good? Can you hear me clearly?
Man, your mic quality is good. I just had my assistant to check and see if the video was good, and we are all good. So take it away.
Okay. Well, I can't do anything about my face, so I'll just leave that as it is and move on. So yeah, basically the thing that I noticed growing up was that, like for me, I had side vision, I had no central vision, and I noticed that every time that I would describe things or that I would point out stuff visually, stuff was different than what I saw. So I felt like I was seeing all these colors and shapes, and I could identify some things, but then there would be these moments where I would realize, oh, what I thought I saw was totally different. I was technically, you get to diagnosis, I was diagnosed with toxoplasmosis, a form of macular degeneration, when I was a little boy, I think 3 or 4 years old. I don't remember this. I just trust my mom's word on it.
Right,
And and there are medical records, but basically, yeah, I was born in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, and it's a little town up in the mountains, in the northwestern mountains, so about an hour from the Tennessee borderline, the Tri-Cities, Johnson City, Kingsport, and Bristol. And I grew up mainly in that area. My family lived in Tennessee and Virginia a little bit when I was a little boy, but 10 years old, Papaw, Appalachian word for grandfather, Papaw died, and we moved back to North Carolina, and I lived there from age 10 basically until my, what was it, like my early 30s. And I had adaptive technology growing up. It's interesting. I was a very visual kid,
Mm.
but I couldn't do sports. So, the advice that you always hear in baseball, keep your eye on the ball. Well, I can't do that. So, all right, guess I'm not doing baseball. All right. So I would stay inside and I would play 8-bit games. I would play a lot of Mario, the old Nintendo games. And my mom kind of felt sorry for me because I couldn't do the sports like other kids. So I was inside, like 3-5 inches from the screen playing Mario, and it gave me a sense of control because there was this world with all these really easy to see colors and graphics, and I spent I don't know how much of my life growing up playing those games.
Mm-hmm.
And I found when I would try to interact with other kids, there was always kind of some barrier there, and it's not that all the kids were mean to me. I actually had a lot of kids in school that were very, very nice to me. So I've heard stories about people being bullied and picked on in school. I had some of that when I was a little kid, but as I got into middle school and high school, I really didn't. That wasn't my experience. I think the weirdest thing about me for people wasn't my vision issue. It was my personality.
Right,
A little
right.
off the wall. Yeah, but basically, I blind was a big trigger word for me because I always aspired to do my best at everything, and so that worked in most areas except vision. So whenever I was reminded that I had a vision problem, I processed it as an embarrassment, as a humiliation. I always tried to walk very straight. And for those of you that can see this on video, I'm sitting up very straight. Like I would look straight ahead forward and walk, which would sometimes unfortunately result in me, smacking into poles or things because I would just miss them. No,
Right.
yeah, no center vision. So, I remember my mom mentioned something to me when I went through the angry teenage phase one time. Because she would say, do you want to take my elbow? No, I'm fine. I would refuse that. And one time she said, honey, I don't know how to help you. You don't want my help. You refuse it, but then you get mad if you hit a sign or a pole or something. So I don't know how to help you. And and it clicked. I'm like, wow, that's got to be frustrating. You want to help your son. He doesn't want your help, but he's mad when he doesn't have it and something bad happens. So I had to kind of work through some issues and how I felt about the word blind. And then when I was in my mid-teens and I went to Raleigh, went to a summer camp, Governor Moorhead School for the Blind campus, and I met these other kids, and they're, most of them had worse vision than me, and some, a lot totally blind, and they had no problem with the word blind. Then it was just normal for them, and I started to realize, wow, the issue is not my vision here. The issue is a negative association that I have had installed installed in myself about this issue of partial blindness. I always tell people I'm visually impaired. Don't call me blind, and it offended me. And I realized this is more of a personal sensitivity issue. So the issue is not the disability; it's my inability to accept things as they are and to like the resisting being categorized, I guess is how I would summarize that.
Let's talk about that, because when I first became blind and I came across the National Federation of the Blind, there was a gentleman there, and so he would explain blindness as the color blue, in saying that there's a myriad of colors and shades of blue, but it's still blue. And so he would say, just say blind, and it's like saying the color blue. And I always thought it a lot deeper. That rationale made sense to me, but I don't have to be categorized or put in a box as being blind. I could make up a word and say, hey, I identify as this, and it may not be the color blue. For me, it may be the color orange, which is my favorite color. And so I agree with you. And I also had that same childhood where I would not want help, but bumping the walls. It was the same thing. So
Why didn't you tell me that was there?
right. I mean, get really angry at this thing. And it was,
Yeah.
I don't even know how I overcame it. I think I just accepted it. Was that the same for you? Did you just accept that this is a stigma and a reality, or how did you come through it?
You know, well, I didn't start experiencing any real or noticeable vision loss until I was probably 19 or 20. And I started noticing there was like 5 or 6 months of time. I'm like, huh, that's weird. I'm bumping into things or people more often. And of course, every time I bumped into something at that point in my life was a humiliation, right? So that's how I processed it emotionally. So what this meant is, oh, I'm getting humiliated more frequently. Well, this is not how life is supposed to work. When you're 20 years old, your humiliation is supposed to be less, not more. I'm done with high school.
Right.
Why am I getting more of this? And I realized after a few months, this isn't a temporary, like a short term thing. I'm not just tired. I've been saying, I don't know what's wrong with me lately for half a year. And it turned out that I had cataracts. And so I'm like, okay, all right, cool. We'll get those removed. And we did that, and it didn't get better. And then I was like 20, 21, 22. I had the cataract removed on my left eye when I was about 21, and then I waited a year to see what would happen, and then the right one. But it didn't get my vision back, and I knew the difference. And I went through, I think I calculated it was about a year and a half of very intense frustration, and I wasn't mad at anyone in particular. I was just frustrated by the loss of the ability that I had, because I still had so much dignity tied to my optic nerves, to what I could visually process. And so if your dignity is tied to any physical ability and that ability is taken away, as you know, or is it, if it degrades, then what your experience and what your reality seems to be is, oh, my dignity is going away and I can't stop that. And I realized after a while that that's not true. And I also started, as I think a lot of people do in their mid-20s, glands and hormones start to get formed in the brain. You start to actually become an adult. And I started to realize the emotional impact that my feelings and my perception had on others around me. And I thought, wait, if this keeps up, I am just going to make myself and everyone around me miserable for the rest of my life, just because my optic nerves don't work. Well, that's kind of pathetic.
Right.
So I prayed about it, and I thought, I started to realize there is tremendous power, and what I for years had perceived as and resisted, which pity. I don't want to be pitied, and that's how I felt. Don't pity me. And I realized this isn't about pity. This is other people are actually, like, I bypassed all of the security guards to people's hearts, and I can get to people emotionally in ways that fully sighted people only can imagine and wish they could. And when I started to perceive that, I thought, I have a tremendous ability to encourage people. And it's not about, oh, poor blind guy, I'm so moved. That, it's not about me and my feelings as much as it is about others and helping them. And I started to test out this theory and just try to, use Braille, which I had learned when I was a kid. I didn't start carrying a cane, man, until I was, what was it, like 27 years old. I went to visit my friend in Iowa. I remember the very first time I stepped out into a parking lot. I'm like, okay, I'm 16-hour road trip away from anyone who knows me around. So if I don't like this, and if I feel humiliated using a blind cane, or a white cane, which I had been given a decade plus earlier, that's okay. No one has to know except my friend, and he's not going to tell anybody. I stepped out into this parking lot it was called the Hy-Vee. It's like an Ingalls program, and I tapped the ground, and I heard cars stop. And I mean, I still have some vision, but I heard that and I saw that, and we walked into the store. And one or two people bumped me, and instead of what I had been doing for years, which was, oh, sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't see too well. People would stop, freeze, look at me and say, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like,
right.
Whoa, I have just flipped psychology. And I called the cane a sorry stick for like 2 years, man. I was like, I've told people, you don't know the power of the cane. This stick makes people open their hearts to you. They don't realize it, but while their hearts are open, you can get in there and you can do a lot of damage, or you can get in there and you can do a tremendous amount of good to encourage other humans, just because your optic nerves don't work and you're using a cane. And when I started to realize that, I'm like, wow, I wish I had become humble like a decade earlier. This would have been great to go into my 20s with this. So that was kind of like my. It's not that I'm, occasionally I still get triggered on stuff. Hold on.
So when you were in like blind school, and well, I guess you didn't realize that power then, but it would have been like you experiencing that, and then the blind kids around you like, yeah, we all have that superpower. What else? You know what I mean?
I think, yeah, basically, it's a lesson that a lot of them got growing up that I didn't, because I'm not blind. Don't call me blind. So,
Right,
like, I'm
right.
not from the planet Krypton. Don't try to tell me I can fly. Oh wow, and I do a lot of Superman and video game references,
Right, right,
because Superman, right, the character is based around this person that doesn't ever truly fit in. But when he realizes how much power he has, I think the reason that so many people admire the Superman character is because he has so much power, but he controls it and he uses it to help others, right?
right, right, right. I never really got into the whole Marvel and DC thing to understand their personalities. I just went and seen um, what's the villain that was the clown of Batman? What's the guy?
Joker?
Joker. And then I really
Yeah, the Joker.
understood that this is like a real backstory to these characters. It was like crazy. And the
Oh
Joker
yeah.
has a girlfriend and she's like in the superhero plot and she has a movie. I'm like, man, this is crazy, But
Okay.
yeah.
I stopped after the animated series, which was '90s. I would get home and watch that, and I loved the voice acting of Mark Hamill. He did the Joker, and but I kind of got over most of the superhero stuff in my teens, but I thought a lot about the psychology. Like, why do people like a guy with an S on his chest flying around? What is the deal other than the music and stuff? And we all aspire to be people, I think, that we want to be looked up to and respected and admired, but at the same time, we want to feel like what we are using our abilities to help others,
Right.
and not just push people around, or you don't have to convince other people, I'm a man, treat me like I'm a man, and yeah, everybody knows you're a man, you're so yeah. But I think with what is perceived as a disability, often we do that, right? Like we said, don't treat me like I'm a don't. Who are you arguing with? There's nobody really arguing. It's just all internal
Right.
coding that has to be restructured, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
Tennessee and then Japan, how did that whole thing come about?
I took a plane. I figured, what, swimming is just too no. See, this story goes deeper than the previous question you asked me. I'll try to give a compressed version of it.
All right.
So I moved to Tennessee when it was like 2013, and I lived there for about half a year. Had a lot of good friends. Wasn't all that different from North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Over the state line. A couple laws different, but people basically the same. Pretty nice. About half a year living there, I started to feel really sad. And I thought about it. I thought, why do I feel so sad? And I had done a lot of emotional work because I had tried to move out of the country less than a year before to Panama. That worked for about a month, and then I had to come back to the U.S. because basically I was broken. I didn't have a good backup plan. And so I was already, had my dignity kind of on the floor and had to pick up and redefine myself from that. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm going to move to Tennessee, and there's a more of an infrastructure here. There's a bus system. I can at least get around. It's a little bit less rural than where I was living. And half a year living there, it was going pretty. Half a year, yeah, living there in Johnson City, and I started to feel sad, and I thought, oh, what's wrong now? Why is this coming up? And I got this little voice inside that says, I want to learn Japanese. Okay, you're already fluent. Now, this is like left brain, right brain talking, right? So you already learned Spanish and you're fluent in Spanish now. So why do you want to learn Japanese? Well, maybe it could be useful somewhere. That's not the answer. Why do you want to learn Japanese? Because I want to marry a Japanese. Oh, come on! You want to marry you don't even know any, And it went back and forth. And basically, I prayed about that, and I thought, there's nothing wrong with this desire. And I had enough good friends that I realized, you know what? If people are your friends, they'll support your goals. And initial emotional reactions aside, like, oh man, another white guy wants to marry a Japanese girl. I had no thing for anime. I want to make this clear. I had no thing for anime or for Pokemon. I like Mario. That's from Japan. But I wasn't in love with the culture. I was actually quite ignorant of the culture. I thought the language would be cool because, like, Spanish was almost too easy. It's the same alphabet as English. It's easier to pronounce. Japanese, it's like the ultimate video game. You will never beat it. And I've learned no kanji, no Chinese character base, but just the complexity of the language itself and how deep it goes in memorizing. I thought this would be fun. I could learn this for years and not master it. That sounds cool. and anyway, basically, long story short, I developed some friendships with people in Japan. I came for the first time ever to Japan in 2016, yeah, July of 2016.
Mm.
Did a couple of visa runs, bounced back and forth. Ended up meeting my wife in 2017. We were actually both taking a class for English teachers, English TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages. We were taking that in 2017, so we both had some similar life goals, and we started corresponding. And I had already met a bunch of single Japanese women by that point,
Mm-hmm.
but I realized, I don't know why I just feel very peaceful around her. And initially, nothing romantic or anything. And she said the same about me later. She actually said later she hoped that I would stay away if I wasn't the right person, and that didn't work. So all right, yeah, but basically, yeah, we started dating, and we were very open and honest and direct with each other. And I'll throw in one more thing about the vision issue. I, for years, had kind of secretly dreaded the thought that maybe one day, got if I really opened myself up too much, I might attract a type of woman that just thought, oh well, he can't see how I look really well anyway, so whatever, I can
Right.
marry him. Yeah,
Right.
I never wanted that kind of life. I'd never wanted that. Nobody wants to think, oh, my spouse married me because he or she couldn't find a better option, right?
All right.
And so anyway, I talked about my insecurities and feelings on that, and I never perceived anything negative from her. And so anyway, we got married in April 2018. Got the visa thing. Actually, it's funny we're having this conversation today. It's about like 11:20, 11:30 p.m. here on Tuesday, same day as you, but like 13 hours later.
Right.
We just went to the immigration office in Yokohama earlier today for me to renew my spousal visa. Hopefully, I'll get a 3-year this time, but. Yeah, that's essentially the core version of the story. I bounced around from friends, bounced around a couple of countries in Asia to stay legal, because you can only, with a U.S. passport, you can only stay a max of 90 days in Japan as a tourist. And so I kind of exhausted that system, and eventually, I was married, and now I'm here.
So I noticed you said hopefully it'll renew for 3 years. I mean, wouldn't it just be forever? I mean, until you get divorced, or I mean, now you're
No,
no.
uh, the 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 standard way they're doing it right now is there are different visas in Japan, but the spousal visa basically is if you're married for a year. When you after you get married, you can apply for a spousal visa, i.e., you get to live in Japan and be a resident, but that only lasts for a year, and then you have to go back to the immigration and renew again, and usually they do a second year, and then I've passed that, right, because my renewal actually window opened up a month ago, April 19th. But then usually the third time that you renew, they'll grant you. They could just do another 1 year, but a lot of times they'll give you a 3-year extension. And so after you've been in the country as a resident a total of 5 years, then you can apply for a permanent residency. But they kind of have this filtration, this process that they put people through, possibly because a number of people get married, and sadly their motives are not good. It's not really love. They're just trying to get Japan's an economic. It's like, in a way, it's like the U.S. of Asia, right? People want to get into the U.S. sometimes, and there are loopholes legally with marriages that you can do that, and unfortunately that happens in Japan as well. So the government kind of has a filtration system to make sure that people are legitimate and going to be here for the long haul before they grant permanent residency.
So the best sushi that you've had in the U.S., how does it compare to having sushi in Japan?
Uh, well, Tennessee's a landlocked state, and in the mountains of North Carolina, it's pretty close by. We didn't have a whole lot of sushi, and what they called sushi in that area. I want to point out something. I hate to do this, but when you think sushi, what do you think of?
Rice. Well, honestly, what first comes to mind is the first thing I ever had, which was a California roll, which I guess wouldn't have anything to
Uh-huh.
do with sushi, but it was rice and vegetables, maybe some seaweed, and then I think when I before I actually tasted it, what used to always be said about it was raw fish, and I wasn't having that until I actually had it, and it was amazing. And
Hmm.
then the last thing that comes to mind is wasabi.
Okay. So su is actually vinegar, and shi I think was the rice. So sushi literally means vinegared rice.
And I hate
And
vinegar.
and the, well, yeah, but really good sushi is properly prepared vinegared rice. And so it's not like chugging some apple cider vinegar, which I do, by the way. But no, it's like saying that a burger has to have cheese or pickles and tomato. Well, a burger is a piece of meat between two pieces of bread. That's what a burger is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what sushi technically is rice that has gone through usually white rice that's gone through a process of pickling, or with vinegar, and and it's often topped with raw fish, which is processed very differently in Japan. Yeah, but the answer to your question is I didn't have enough sushi in the U.S. to really make a deep comparison. I had a place or two in Tennessee when I lived there that I went to, and I have to say I enjoyed it. It was good. I'm not going to say that it was better or equal to what I have in Japan, but I would still go back there. Like my wife and I were actually in Tennessee and North Carolina a year ago, and I wanted to go to that place and ask what she thought of it because I thought it's pretty decent. The thing is, in Japan, the way it's done is so different, and like you'll go to what's called kaiten sushi. Kaiten is a conveyor belt, so it's like a little train, the conveyor belt. You sit at your table. They have a touch screen, not accessible at all. You got to be with somebody sighted for that. But you order what you want, and they make it in the kitchen, and it comes to your table, and you have to grab it from the conveyor belt thing. So doing it that way, and you stack up the plates, it's like a game. It's actually a lot of fun, and it's very, very affordable. Like you can have an awesome meal of all the delicious sushi you can imagine. Like there are two tiny little pieces on a plate, and the plates maybe I'm forgetting the system used in the U.S. I think in kilograms and kilometers and kilo everything. But even when I eat sushi, I'm thinking of kilobytes. No, it's you can get like what is it like a plate of sushi is between $1 and $2 US, but a plate is only two pieces. So you'll order that kind, and if you like it, order some more of that. But you can order such a variety, and like you spend about 2,000 yen, which is a little under $20 US, and you got an awesome meal. And so it's something that well, with COVID, obviously, we're doing it a lot less. But the thing is, my wife makes sushi at home, so I got that covered.
Got you. How does and I'm just getting into the cultural differences from the United States to Japan, but
Hmm.
the money, I mean, I noticed you said 2,000 yen. I would think
Yeah.
that's a lot. Um, is it a lot in Japan? 2,000
No,
yen?
that was actually the big. No, that was the biggest concern that I had. And when I was living in Tennessee, I was thinking, you hear rumors and myths, and some of them are based on truth, and a lot of them are based on hype. Tokyo is the most not exciting, expensive city in the world to live. Yeah, you know what? I hear Manhattan's pretty expensive, but coming from the mountains, like you can rent a place pretty cheap.
Right.
Japan is the same. It really is the same, and I believe the way my wife has explained it. Japanese businesses like I can't bring myself to say Toyota anymore because I'm in Japan. It's like Toyota. I have to say it the Japanese way. Those big companies, Toyota being one of them, it probably has some deals from U.S. and Japan side, and U.S. military. The Navy bases are over here, so I think that there's probably some system in place to keep the exchange rate pretty similar. It fluctuates a little bit, but basically, to make your math really simple, think of a yen as a penny, as 1 cent. So instead of saying $20, think of saying 2,000 pennies. Like there's no dollars and cents in denominator. It's all yen. It's a single unit. So 100. They have dollar stores over here, but they're not called dollar stores. They're called 100 yen shops.
Okay.
So that's all. The numbers look bigger, but it's basically the same thing. And just like in the U.S., you go out in the country, you can rent a house for maybe $300-400, which is like 30,000 or 40,000 yen. It's about the same amount. You go into a place like in Tokyo. I've got friends in Tokyo that are putting down about $800 to $1,000 a month on a really small, what they would call a shoebox apartment. we're kind of in the middle, here where we're living in Yokosuka. It's not totally out in the sticks or anything, but it's not super urban Tokyo. It's nice. I like the area where we live. And the answer to your question about money is basically there's a lot of equivalency, like how, a pair of shoes in the U.S. and what would it cost you in Japan? About the same. Some things are cheaper. Transportation on trains, man, they have got it down here in Japan, and they announce it in on the main lines in Tokyo, and even here they'll announce the major stops in English. And so like the train, my wife used to work at Haneda International Airport. It's a 1 hour train ride from where we are, and 1 hour to get to the airport by train costs you about $8, $7 to $8 US. And so it's very, transportation itself, or the train system is awesome. It's very affordable, and the staff are super polite. I have traveled as a single guy all around this country by train, and I've never had any problems. I've had nothing basically but kindness and consideration from the staff. Visiting Japan as a tourist is great, assuming you're a polite and respectful individual.
Okay, got you. Well,
Yeah.
I think the question everybody really wants to know, going back to almost the sushi conversation, is the McDonald's there. So you've
Yeah.
had plenty of McDonald's in the United States, I know. Now, how does the McDonald's in Japan compare to the U.S. McDonald's? Is it the same? You got sushi on the menu as well, or what?
Um, Man, it's funny. I didn't imagine myself answering these questions on a video show or a podcast, but I listened to podcasts to find out this information like 5 years ago, and now I'm repeating the same info. The portions are smaller, and the portions, basically, you think about soda size. Soda, like if you go to McDonald's in the U.S. and order a small, that's like a medium to large size soda in Japan, and the same thing. The fries are smaller. McDonald's is McDonald's as far as the quality of food you're getting, and the price is pretty much the same. They do have something that they've got, rice burger. So instead of I think that it's like rice and a burger instead of the bread, they've got a chicken like teriyaki burger. I don't know. I go to McDonald's once or twice a year to remind myself of why I don't go to McDonald's more than once or twice a year. Seriously, that's the only. I'm like, I've forgotten what McDonald's is. I'm like, yeah, I tell my wife sometimes, like, yeah, how long was? Oh, it was about a year ago. Yeah, let's go to McDonald's. And we come out, and she's like, how was it? I'm like, well, I've had my yearly reminder of why I don't go to McDonald's. Want to go get sushi? Yeah, that sounds great.
Right. Got
Or
it.
ramen. Ramen's good too.
What is that? Because I've been exposed, of course, to the ramen noodles that you get out the pack out the store. And of
Yeah,
course in the
those are
Oriental.
very popular here too.
Okay, in the Oriental section of the store, I'll get like the bowls, and those are at least better tasting noodles than what I grew up on. And then you'll go to the restaurants that have the ramen, and they, you know, do it in the big wok, and you got these noodles and
Uh-huh.
vegetables and meat. So what is ramen there? Is it kind of all of the above? Maybe just better or different, or
Yeah, exactly. Everything from top ramen, the noodles, the cheap packs that you get as a kid, maybe you go through a period of life as a child, you think I could live on this, and then you realize no, that's not sustainable.
right?
But yeah, there's in Yokohama there is something called the Ramen Museum, and it's not fossilized ramen. That's the first thing I thought of, but it's like from the what's called the Showa Jidai, the Showa era, which is like runs from I think from the end of World War II up till 1988, I think it was. That whole era that Emperor Showa was reigning. And inside this ramen museum, it's basically different. It's like a recreation of that era, and there are different shops and different styles. They have their own different processes. Just like in the U.S., you'll go to a mom and pop burger shop, and they say we do it this way. We have our own special thing, right? The ramen shops are that way. But the central idea is it's noodles that are in liquid, and there's vegetables and or meat in the bowl. And yeah, you can get a bowl for between 500 to 1,000, like between $5 to $10 basically. And some of them are really not that great and they're over greasy and you feel bad afterward. But a lot of them are just amazing. Like I had a friend, no joke, I had a friend that I met around the same time I met Eric Eric Smith back in 2014. My friend Avery had flight privileges. And with Delta, and he got to be on a non-rev flight. He came over here, 14-hour flight across the planet, one weekend before his privileges expired, because he said, "I want to come and hang with you and want to eat ramen." Like, jet lag and everything. You know that you're gonna deal with this. Like, I don't care. Can I? Is that cool? Can I stay with you? I'm like, absolutely. But I mean, so you're gonna get here Friday. We're going to eat ramen. You're going to eat ramen Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday morning you're leaving. He goes, yes, exactly. I'm like, oh, okay. That's what we did.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's funny. Yeah.
Got you. So speaking of Mr. Eric Smith, let me just start off by saying this is a great gentleman. Love him to death. Always been friendly. And we're going to tell a couple of funny stories about Mr. Smith. I know he's listening. So you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Oh, well, if Eric's listening, that ruins my next 10 minutes of material. Oh. I can't say this is what I was going to say. No, no, actually, Eric and I, like, we met and talked a couple times, but I don't have as many stories. So I'd like to hear one of yours first, if that's okay.
All right. So it wasn't funny at the time. So I met Eric through a mutual friend, Giorgio Vickers, which is my best friend. He said, hey, this guy does music. He put on this concert. I went, I talked to him, great guy, and he's blind. And so I talked to him and we had conversation back and forth, and I told him, that I played the saxophone. I wanted to get more into music and performing. He was like, hey, why don't you come to one of my rehearsals? We're getting ready for this concert. And so I'm like, cool. So I go to his rehearsal. I go and I talk to him, and we're eating pizza, and the wife likes me. And, once the wife likes you, you're in there, And so I told him, listen, can I open up for your show? I got part of my band, and we can do it. He was like, man, sure. And so we get to the show. Now the show starts at 7. I'm there at 4:30. That's the time I'm told to be there. He tells me he's gonna do, sound check. He sets up the speakers, he sets up the microphone, the drummer comes in, the keyboardist comes in, the other saxophonist comes in, the singers come in, everybody is being set up, and he does mic check. He mic checks everybody except for me and my singer. And I'm like, and we open up, you know what I mean? We're the first person, come on. And I'm like, dude, so you really not going to mic check us? By this time, he's gone. So we never knew what we were going to sound like when we came out. But everybody else was good. So that's actually the funny part. But the next time we did a show together, I'm grabbing him by his coattail. I'm following him, dude, we're going to mic check, right? We're going to mic check, right? And so now it's this thing. Because, he just totally left us out in the dark, man. He's calling back to the caterer, hey, can you hear us? And, all in the hallway, can you hear us? And I'm like, okay, well, when are we gonna get our mics checked for the concert? So
what happened? Were they on? Were they okay?
Yeah, it was
what happened?
It was fine. I just figured if we were part of the the thing that you would let us check our mics and make sure everything is good. But he was super busy. I guess when you put on your own shows, you not only have to be the performer and the organizer and the director and the sound check guy, you just, have to do it all. So I charged it to his head and not his heart, as they say. Yeah, man.
I never heard that phrase before. I'm going to copy and paste that one.
Man, I hate that phrase. There's a dude that said it, and I'm like, man, that is the corniest thing. But I realized what it meant.
You've just propagated it. You've just sent it to the other side of the planet, and I'm gonna translate it into Spanish. Ahora, amigos, lo que él dijo es cárgalo a su cabeza, no su corazón. And now it's in Latin America. Oh my goodness! And I'm about to say it in Japanese. Wow. Okay. So anyway, I don't have any.
You speak Spanish?
I don't have any. Yes. I'm fluent in Spanish.
Shoot, we could have been speaking Spanish the whole time. I'm just joking. I'm
Well,
just joking. I don't know nothing. I don't know any Spanish. And
let's do the mic check first.
okay, all right.
No,
Can you hear
no,
me?
but
Got you.
¿cómo? ¿Qué me dijiste?
Sí.
Que no te escucho, que estás muy lejos. No. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Uh,
No, no, but basically, actually, interestingly enough, Eric and I got kind of connected to each other because of or involving my desire to learn Japanese. Because I, in early 2013 or late 2013, I'm like, okay, so I came to the decision I'm going to work on Japanese. So I did what any reasonable, sensible person would do. You need to be surrounded by people who speak the language. So I went online and found a bunch of videos. That's what I did. Eventually, I did start talking to people, but yeah. Well, not just YouTube, but Pimsleur. Mr. Jones says to Mrs. Tanaka, "What are you doing, Mrs. Tanaka?" But she doesn't understand. "Sumimasen," she says. That kind of stuff. Anyway, what happened was I went down to Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, that area.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, because was a Japanese group of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, so I'm like calling up a Japanese group. Okay, there's some people who speak Japanese down there. And I went down there and I met my buddy Josh, and Josh is the one that told me about a friend of his named Eric. And we never got to meet that time. That was when was that? That was like April or May of 2014. And I don't remember, but I think that Eric and I actually finally got to meet like either in 2015 or maybe it was 2016, like right before I went to Japan. I chilled with friends in Atlanta for a couple of weeks right before I left for Japan, but Eric had me over to his place, and he and Gwen were really nice to me, and I doodled on one of the keyboards he had in his studio, and he was on Periscope, and I didn't know what Periscope was. I'm like, that's cool. And anyway, I don't have time to learn about that right now because I'm going to go to Japan and figure out how to live on the other side of the planet. So that's like, we kind of fell out of touch for a couple of years. And then last year, fast forward, like 3-4 years, and my wife and I went back to North Carolina 2 weeks, visit the family, let them see, yes, in 3D. I didn't make this up. I don't have a computer-generated wife. She's real. Someone married me. This is amazing. And then we went to New York, stayed up there visited friends up there. And then to top the trip off, it was a 1-month trip back to the U.S. We went down to Buckhead, stayed there. And the funniest thing happened. Eric, I heard somebody yell out at a gathering at the Conyers Assembly Hall. Jehovah's Witnesses, a bunch of international delegates down there. And I heard hey, Eric. I'm like, somebody just said Eric. I'm like, about to go look over there. I said, what do you see? She's like, it's a guy. I think he can't see. Maybe he's blind. I'm like, Eric Smith. And he turned around and I said, it's Cai. We reconnected, and it was great. And
now, were you the only two? Were
and it
you
was
the only
so
one yelling?
I think a bunch of people yelled, but I yelled his name very intentionally, and I think I did a voice like Eric Smith, something, that would make your hair stand up on end or something to get it. I don't know. I have made up memories. I could be inventing half of this stuff, but I remember he was there and I was there, and I was so happy. We hugged, and Ben was there, and we exchanged info, and then we didn't talk for quite a while, and then he actually just reached out and contacted me a couple weeks ago. And we talked, and now I know you. So that's the extent of my Eric story so far. I got to make some more.
That's the way it goes. Cool. So we got about 12 minutes, and I wanted your personality and your voiceovers to come out during the interview so that we can ask you about it. So how did you get into voice acting? What type of voice acting do you do? Is it in multiple languages? Who's your favorite voice actor, and what's your setup? How do you just give us the whole voice acting thing?
Well, I speak about it as if I'm a seasoned professional. The reality is I'm just trying to get going right now, actually, with voiceover. I've done a few gigs, but I basically have 3 streams of income that I'm propagating right now. The one I abbreviate them MTV, so music, teaching, which is mainly language teaching, and voiceover. Teaching is the one that I've been at the longest. I started teaching online, signed up for it late 2014 because I realized okay, this is getting serious. I got to get some money together to be able to go to Japan. So I started on teaching online. Initially, it was English and Spanish, and built an online profile and got some teaching experience there. And I still do that. I still do teaching with English, and not many Spanish students right now. I might be getting one pretty soon. Somebody listening might be taking a Spanish lesson pretty soon. But besides that, the voice acting, I've always, even when I was a little kid and my vision was much better, I always loved identifying. I didn't know anybody's names, but I would watch a movie, watch a cartoon, and whether I could see the character clearly on screen or not was irrelevant. I would hear this character, and then I would hear another movie. I'm like, that's the same guy. I identified before I ever knew Robin Williams' name. I knew that's that guy, right? That guy. Oh, I know he does the voice on that character of that movie. So I thought his personality was very fun, and I just in the past year I actually started doing a bit more research on Mark Hamill, because I did love the Joker from the 90s, the Batman the Animated Series, and I found out something funny from a friend of mine that lives here. Mark Hamill was actually, as a kid, he went to Yokosuka High School in the very city where I am now living. Wow. He lived here. Yeah, like Luke Skywalker lived where. So I'm Kai Walker. I'm living here now. That name's Kai Walker. That's copyright. You can't just go and use that. But yeah, I've watched some interviews with Mark, and I think he and I have similar traits in that he admired voice acting growing up. Like the guy that did the Donald Duck and a bunch of other characters. He saw that and he's like, wow. So if your voice can change, you can be anybody. It doesn't matter how you look. And so that appeals to me. I don't have a favorite voice actor, but those are the two names, Robin Williams and Mark Hamill, that come to mind. The answer to your question about the voiceover is basically I like doing explainer stuff. The three things that the RIP, you're either trying to relate, inform, or promote when you're doing VO, right? Mm-hmm. I enjoy relating. I enjoy emotionally getting into people's space and trying to feel what that's like, and feeling that and speaking from that voice. I like informing. All those cheesy old videos from the 80s. You hear the sterile music and take exactly 2 tablets a day. Click on the green arrow, the bottom right of your screen. Oh, you can't see it? Too bad. Get someone to help you. No, it's like, and that I like combining comedy with this serious official type voice. But I like the idea of doing promo stuff as well. I haven't done anything officially in Spanish or Japanese yet. I could, but I did a children's book. I've done an explainer video, and I think 1 or 2 projects before that. I've only done a total of like 4 or 5 projects so far, and I'm just using Focusrite with an SM58 currently, and some folding padding things that I don't have my setup right now. That's why it's echoey in here, because I'm just in teaching and music studio right now. Okay. But I don't know if that answers your question. But
yeah, it did. And so Eric texted, said he is listening. We talked about your teaching, but he said to have you to talk about your music. So talk about your music.
Okay. Okay. Well, my family was rather poor growing up, so we get the flea market keyboards that had 2 or 3 octaves. And Casio, my grandmother, my mama would get me those, and mom would encourage that as well. And I always liked keys. Funny story about guitar. I was afraid for years to learn guitar because I was afraid that I knew your fingers had to get callous, and I thought, well, if my fingers get callous, and one day if my vision gets worse, I planned a lot as a kid and worried. Mm-hmm. Like one day if I need to use Braille, and what if my fingers are calloused, and then I can't read Braille because I've been playing guitar, and that concerned me, so I put off learning guitar. And one day I was like, I don't know, 18, 19 years old, and somebody said, don't you think there are any blind guitar players out there that can read Braille? I'm like, oh, yeah. I don't know, maybe I'll look into it. And I started playing guitar. So I started playing guitar when I was 19. I grew up with the video game music. Like I realized after years I loved video game music, and a lot of people just heard the old 8-bit that kind of stuff. And I always loved that. I loved classical music. I loved jazz. I had a friend who introduced me to jazz in my late teens. Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis, Brubeck, Charlie Parker, all these jazz guys, and I'm like, man, this is cool. So I studied music theory on my own when I was 20. I was encouraged by a friend down in Florida to do that, and I started just learning to play different moods and emotions. So I've just actually 2 months ago started Cai Beam Music on YouTube, the YouTube channel, and I'm basically trying to put out free content with the hopes that that eventually, if I put out and add enough value to people's background experience of me playing piano, that that I'll get some support on Patreon, some traction there, and be able to build that. So, like, I love all these things. I love teaching, being able to show somebody, give them the confidence to express themselves in another language, or in English for those who are not native English speakers. I love the idea of using my voice to emotionally, basically try on different characters. And I love music because it's so easy to misunderstand text, and even when you're having a conversation with somebody, you don't know what's going on firing in their brain, right? But when you hear music, as you know, being a sax player, people don't usually misunderstand you when they hear you play.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of music, Eric said that wasn't what he was talking about. Evidently, you're working on a current music project, so I don't know if that's the YouTube thing or whether you have a CD that you're working on. But if you think of current music and you, is that is there
Basically, that's what I'm trying to do right now is the YouTube stuff, and it's several. I've done several different series of music. Now I feel nervous because I don't know what Eric's talking about. It must be the YouTube thing, because that's my main thing that I'm working on right now. Is just I've just recently learned how to operate GarageBand, and I'm actually doing MIDI recordings. So I want to do multi-layer stuff, and sound beds and all that. But right now I'm really just trying to make myself vulnerable on camera. Like we got 3 cameras we set up in here, one on the keys, one on my face, and one on the side of me. And I've got a friend of mine who's graphic designer, and he's serving as my video editor in Tokyo. And a guy from California has been living there. He's given me a lot of good advice over the past few years, getting myself set up here in Japan. But anyway, he's compiling the 3 angle shots. So I'm like in here doing stuff on camera, like self-conscious, kind of trying to get past that, like, well, whatever, trying to let people see what I'm doing, because I don't care about it doesn't mean other people don't. And so trying to, like I said before, using the emotional ability you have. Like, so many people think, oh, I'm not good. And in Japan, a lot of people, I have met so many people that are just flat out better than me at piano. They're better. Their skill level's higher, but they are gripped with such fear of making mistakes in public. Or if you say, would you like to play? No. Because if anybody's watching, they're terrified. And I basically am trying to be the guy who doesn't see well, who gets on camera and plays and makes mistakes and still opens his heart and lets other people inside and feel what I'm feeling. And that's the big project right now. And I'm trying to just open that up to people via YouTube right now. And I've got a Patreon account, Cai Beam Music on Patreon. And I'm hoping that as I move forward, I'll be able to release more and more music and have people that are willing to chip in a few bucks each month, so that I would love, like, if I had to give up MTV, music, teaching, voiceover, I would just to have one of them. I would keep music. I love teaching and voiceover, but I'm trying. This is the first time ever I'm trying to do something serious with music. So that's the main project I'm working on right now, is playing different stuff on piano, and I'm doing vocal trumpet, where I basically do a trumpet with my mouth, and just trying to do that kind of stuff. Mostly instrumental, a little bit of singing and covers, but a lot of my own original stuff. I actually copyrighted an album called Deepest Heart back in 2012, and I don't have a producer for that or the money to fund that right now. So YouTube, I'm hoping, will allow me to get enough traction so that I can get a full producer and arranger and get Deepest Heart together, because that's a song with an album with 9 songs. It's got lyrics and everything. My wife's translated them into Japanese as well. So, like, that's a big project I'd love to do, but I'd like to have an ongoing thing, because I've sat at a street piano in this city for months. Not directly, like I did go home and sleep, but I've had months of experience. Last year they had a street piano, and I just went there and I sat and I played, and I heard what it did to people. And some people would come up to us, and one guy, like this guy came up, and my wife said later, she said he had tears in his eyes. I'm like, oh man. So it's given me enough positive encouragement that there are people out there that actually want to hear me play piano. And it doesn't matter if I consider that I'm messing up or I'm whatever. There are people that would stand around and listen and just enjoy this. I'm like, well, if I could do that right now, that'd be great. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm not just viewing YouTube as a gateway to producing the album. I'm like, you know what? If people want to hear me play piano, that's great. And I'm trying to put that out there. And and do it for free. And hopefully, if it adds enough value to people, they'll feel compelled to reciprocate. That's what I'm doing on that end.
Got you. Sounds like a plan. All right, so 3 minutes left. Number one, thank you for the interview. Number two, the absolute first guest, professional or otherwise, who had their professional mic set up, camera angles set up, lighting set up, and all the way across the world. And it's a visually impaired guy. Amazing.
Thank you.
Never has happened in
Props to my wife for hours.
hours of putting it together.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No. I was just saying that. So before we get out of here, let people know how they can reach you, and let us hear some of that trumpet you do.
All right, man. I should have had the keyboard set up, and I would have done it with the keyboard. But all right, the best way right now, I've got a myriad of Gmail addresses for different things. Language teaching is for language lessons, teacher Cai Beam at gmail.com. Voiceover work, caibeamvo@gmail.com. And music, caibeammusic at gmail.com. If you want a simpler way, this is a baby site. It was just born a week ago. But if you go to caibeam.com, just my name, CAIBEAM.com, there is a contact form there. And my only at the moment my only commercial demo, but VO demo. But there's a contact form, and you can put your info in there, and that'll get filtered to me, and that's another way to contact me. That's a way it should get through.
Okay, got you. And any social media? I know you spoke about YouTube. Are you on Twitter and Facebook and all of that stuff? And what's your YouTube again?
No, not yet. The YouTube is just the three words. My name, Cai Beam Music. So those three words.
These three words. Okay.
Yes. Okay. If you've got a really I'll probably reveal my ignorance by opening myself up to this. But if you've got a really well-known piece that you'd like me to do on trumpet, I can play us out with that.
Georgia Mama.
I don't remember the lyrics. See.
That's amazing. Now, what I got to do is actually get that song. I got a guy arranging me a version of it, and I'm gonna play it. I love that song for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Who knows why?
Well,
I go to James Taylor, Caroline on my mind. I don't know why. I like it.
Yeah, no, it's not because I live in Georgia. Really, I'm gonna tell you what it was briefly. So, if you ever watched the movie Ray, Georgia did him wrong. And I feel in a lot of ways that Georgia did me wrong, and I'm actually leaving right now to correct a 5-year-old wrong. But he was able to come back victorious, and that was the song that he created for Georgia, and it became something great in the state and all of that. So that's the true reason why I know that I love that song. But it's deep to me because I know I didn't do anything wrong. It's just that the prejudice in Georgia with people who wasn't successful in their chosen field, like it's my fault, and I was, do anything to stop you, and it just shows you the evil in the world. So that's why I love that song, and I'm gonna do my own version. But,
that's deep, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So listen, Eric. And Kai, because Eric is listening, he's proved it through 2 text messages and multiple questions. Definitely appreciate it, man. You're super, super talented. Of course, we're friends forever. I'm getting over to Japan. Great interview, super insightful. Any other adjectives that are good that we can tack on? It is you. Much success. And as usual, everybody else, Kai, I'm about to hang up on you. As I always say, let's change the world, and let's change the world together.
Thanks a lot, Vashaun.
No problem.